Welcome back to Jack of All Games Tabletop. I'm Dave Wallace, and today we're doing something a little bit different. I thought it might be interesting to start doing an occasional interview here or there with game creators. So we're just going to kind of get a look at, maybe what some of their mindset is behind it, and a little bit of, personal background on some different people, and uh, start with this one today. A new friend that I made. His name is Matt Gardner. He has a company called Mod Games, and he is getting ready to put out a game called Plot Weaver: Cards of Creation. So this is the interview that I did with him, and I hope you enjoy it.
Oh, geez. All right. So, first of all, let everyone know that I'm letting everyone know that we are joined today by Matt Gardner of Mod Games, and we are going to talk about a game that you and your partner are working on, Plot Weaver: Cards of Creation. First of all, though, I got to say, welcome. Thanks for being on here, for being my first interviewee.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for having me. This is the first time we get to talk about this game in a show. So it's
Oh, nice. So I'm the premiere.
It is, yeah. We've done play and ponders, which are kind of our user testing, but we call them play and ponders, and we've done a lot of those, and that's been spectacular. But so far, this is our first chance to actually talk about it and
all right, great.
Kind of share it. So
make sure we spread this around a lot then. Obviously, want to get into a game, but I want to start off first with a little personal background, gaming background. I did read your LinkedIn page, which really, I also watched an interview with you not too long ago. Both of these things have made me realize how out of touch I am with anything modern, because probably the first time I've ever even looked at LinkedIn anything.
Okay.
And then I had to Google what is UX. Because I had no idea. I had no idea what that term was. So obviously, so now I've got a better understanding. But if you want to tell us a little bit about your just your personal background, and where you come from, what you do, and all that.
Yeah, no, for sure. Oh, I sometimes there's a thing called curse of knowledge bias, and it's the whole bias that we assume because we know something, everyone else
sure
they do,
Yeah.
So that's great. Okay, no, that's excellent, because so a user experience designer is quite different than graphic design, even though my background actually is from visual communication. So I took a 2-year program at a place called McEwen in Edmonton 25 years ago or something. I graduated in 2000, and I just had a knack for visual communication. As someone who's got dyslexia, ADHD, I was kind of, I wasn't the best student, and so I went, I was a cabinet maker for a while. I was working in a knife store, and then I ended up wanting to be a comic book artist so bad, and I ended up in this program thinking maybe this would get me there. And then I ended up, working for that same college. That quickly transferred into a job in television where I became a broadcast designer. So I was doing all the bugs and elements for television and stuff. So I had I had 3 national channels, 1 provincial channel, and then eventually 2 local channels that I did all the graphics and stuff for. And that was a really fun job. I left that because I wanted to go back to the illustration. I was doing textbooks and things like that, doing sequential art for them. And then 2008 crash hit, print industry died, and I had to pivot. So I went into web. But what I didn't like about web was just the sameness with everything. I found it was I couldn't really get into the designing or the visual. So I really started getting into user experience, which is more the way people use products. So it gets into the design of things in terms of the skeleton. How does that work? Where does the thumb go naturally? How do we see how people use these products and then grow and learn from it. And so I really kind of dived into research and really started to see that a lot of the world is just based on subjective interpretations of the same types of behavioral experiences.
Okay.
If that makes sense. Like we get stimulated by one thing. Say for you, it could be a metal concert. For me, it could be like, petting my cat. I don't know. Like it's one of those things we get our reward triggers because it's just the dopamine, serotonin, different things like that. And so I started realizing also how much people are using dark patterns, which are like basically things to trick you to buy something that you wouldn't normally. And so I started seeing this a lot. And so I've kind of made it my life's work to kind of build things so people understand these stories.
Gotcha.
And understand that a lot of things are built on stories, but you have the power to write your own story, which means you have the power to write your own future.
Nice.
Because all life is a series of narratives. And in the business world, that's what they do. They build these scenarios hoping that everyone will, they kind of Imagineer it. It's very similar to Disney's Imagineering. You're trying to build an experience that people will follow. But the dark patterns are like, hey, I want to cancel this, but they make it so hard. It's like, no, don't be a dick. Like just be nice, because like, honestly, good customer service and just being a good person actually is going to win you more loyalty than anything.
Yeah, definitely.
Because eventually you trick someone once or twice, that's it.
Yeah.
Like it's not worthwhile.
Losing trust. So then are you an independent contractor? You go and work with businesses for
yeah. So MGUX, I've worked with, quite a few, companies come in. I will help their teams kind of bring their design teams in with their development teams so they kind of work better together. Because creative people and engineers, as you know, they sometimes don't speak the same languages. So I kind of see it as like I'm speaking like, human to Vulcan. Like and because I'm kind of in
translator.
the middle. Yeah. And so I think that's always been my knack, is I can create a shared vision to go forward while also creating a holistic understanding of the problem space. So it's not just this that's the problem. Let's look at the ecosystem it exists in, in a systems thinking kind of way, so we can see like, hey, wait a minute, this is happening because there's a delay from this process here because we didn't set something up right, or we weren't transparent here. Yeah. So it's like, how do you fix things? And so to try and get like people I knew or like my teams and stuff to work, I started seeing a lot of strengths in RPGs, like for scenario building, but to build empathy as well. Because once you can get like the engineering team to actually feel what it's like to be on the other side of the situation, to be the customer in that situation, then all of a sudden things change and you start making things that work for a win-win. Cool. So,
that's interesting. I can see how this can lend into game designing. What about your let's talk about gaming experiences, as long as we're a tabletop games show that people want to hear. Like, what's your credentials, and as far as you're playing, what got you into games in general?
Okay, so games has been kind of one of those things I've dipped in and out of, but I moved to Vancouver in 2007, and I met this guy Shannon, who's like, he's now with Panda Games. He's awesome, but like he introduced me to a whole bunch of board games, and so I started hanging out with them every couple of weeks, kind of playing. At first, I love board games for their artwork because I'm an illustrator, and it's just like comic books to this. And then I started realizing how similar it was to like when I was a kid, we used to role play all the time. That's just what you did. Like I was Han Solo probably, most of my childhood.
Sure, me too.
Yeah, exactly.
You always made. I made my younger brother have to be Luke because I wanted to be Han because he was cooler.
Exactly. Yeah. No, this kid Kevin, he was Luke, like best friend. But like, and then there was Dana, who lived across the road from him, and she was Leia, and like we were thick as thieves, and the dogs were like either stormtroopers or Vader, depending on what we needed them in the
Sure.
scene, so. But I realized like that was this kind of imaginative play that is really missing from a lot of like
Board
creative.
games.
Well, no, but in creative companies, there's no creativity. I'll probably get ridiculed for saying this, but it's actually true. And it comes from fear. They're fearing being judged by, management, different people like that, fear for, saying the wrong thing. But I realized in playing RPGs with peers and coworkers, people would start opening up. So like, even if it's something like Cards Against Humanity, or even when it's something like Exploding Kitties, you're just playing something.
Yeah.
But it creates this psychological safe space where you can be creative together.
Yeah.
And you can imagine together. And when you do that, there's something about that that's very similar to like jamming. Like you play music, but when you improv and you get into a groove and you're like, this is like riding a wave for people. Like I know that feeling. And that's the flow state. So how do you get into the flow state with work? So games. So a lot of these ones, like I'll go back to, I think some of my favorites were Catan. I love Catan. Like I used to have all the expansions and stuff. A divorce kind of wiped me out of a lot of my video games. But
I know how that goes. Yeah.
But yeah, like Puerto Rico and Catan. A lot of those games really got into.
Did you do RPGs when you were younger, like D&D and stuff like that?
I did. It was one of those things that it was always, I played with a couple friends and people would try and get me to DM. I think I would get kind of socially anxious, like, oh, I can't do this. And I think I could see myself as a DM. Like I enjoy that part. I love making up stories on the fly. Like I've got this whole future world as well. We've also got a world, like we want to do a video game where we have flatulent cats instead of guns. And like there's many ways that you can use first person shooters that can be like good for everyone, right? Like just kind of fun. So
I've never told anybody this. I had an idea long time ago for a game called Hippie Hunter, and my idea was to be a video game where you were like a member of Slayer, the band, but instead of guns that shoot bullets, you would have to go to like a Fish concert and shoot them with deodorant bombs and stuff like that, and shampoo
awesome.
out there, dreads and stuff like that. Probably get some hate for that, but it was just I was being silly.
It's hilarious.
I was a metalhead, so.
No, but that's the whole thing. Like that mods versus the rockers, like like that whole rivalry will always go like hippies versus bikers. Like it's I think it's as old as time. I think we need each other. That's the funny thing. I always see it as the dude and Walter. Like, and it's like if we let Donnie die, we can't let Donnie die. Like Donnie's the equilibrium, but like, that's just it. Like that's a Big Lebowski reference. Just
of course.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think I've got a PhD from the Church of Dude. So.
Nice. You're abiding.
Oh, I abide. Yeah. No, it's amazing because I almost think that like that is the duality of our creative spirit, and we need each other. I think that's the thing. I realized that like I grew up in Alberta, like that's redneck country, right? And like I kind of think there's something to redneck punk that is just crazy. Like it's DIY, you do it yourself, you build on it, right?
Yeah.
And I always thought getting into the creative industries that would be what it would be like. And it's funny, it's not. It's actually in the tattoo studios. It's actually in the comic book, like small indie comic book companies. It's in these fringe theater festival type things, or like in Britain, they have like the Edinburgh Fringe. So much funny stuff comes out of there, but it bubbles up from the people. And so we need to teach people how to do that again. And gaming is a great way to do it because when we game, we actually get to practice doing something.
Sure.
We built our confidence. And the way we built this game is we wanted it so that, say for you, you wanted it to be in your world, awesome. If someone else wants to make it their own world, great. If someone wants to just start a story, they can, like, no matter where they are. Because that was one of my problems with the RPG games, is there was a certain point where I think I just got tired of the fantasy realm. And it's like, I wanted to think more about solar punk. Like, how can we like see this in like, how can we use this to kind of build our own future worlds instead of living in the past?
Sure.
In feudalism and stuff, like how can we live in something that is.
Are you old enough to remember this game? This is my reading material for the day.
Holy smokes. I recognize the artwork.
Yeah, this was my favorite. When I was a kid, you know, I was into D&D, but I grew up in an uber Christian house. So it was the devil. So I could play it at my friend's house, but I couldn't have it. So this was also a TSR game. Same company that made D&D made this one. And this was my, obsession. Yeah. This is,
what year was that? That's like 80.
This is 80. This says 1980 on it, actually. Well, that might be
1980.
I think it was I was started playing it about 83, but yeah, I loved this game. So yeah, I have an old box set of it. I just brought it in just to read for today in my free time.
That's the thing. Like, we need to bring back some of these things. Like, I keep on thinking about like even the illustrations from the 70s. Remember when we were a kid, like everything was these organic spaceships that looked like they were kind of.
Yeah, I saw you talking about that on the other interview that you did. That was really interesting. Just thinking about some of that design back then, and even I was actually just watching a documentary the other day about. It was actually about the making of the movie Alien, but they were drawn on what influences that came from in some of the old like 60s sci-fi and movies and stuff, and what some of their design was like. It's really, really pretty interesting.
See, that's the part of all of this that I love, is dissecting where they kind of got these these ideas. Like Lucas with the hero's journey. So we have the monomyth in our game. So that's like one of the plots. Oh my God, I'm just zonking out here. Sorry, story patterns. So we have story patterns, which are like, we have 6 of them that you can choose.
We probably need to get into
I can show that.
The game itself. So let's just go into talk about your game that's going to be released soon, right? But Plot Weaver Cards of Creation. You're going to GameFound, yes?
We are going. So this is what we're working on right now, but I can kind of explain the story of how the card game works. So these here, this dice and these represent actually the story structures that everyone kind of decides on. They can choose it if they want, but we recommend rolling it. So you have 6 different. So you have parallel plot lines. This is a frame tale, circular narrative. We have, I always forget this one. This is monomyth. And this one is inverted story. This one is also, I always forget. Miriam's gonna shoot me, but I can figure this out right here. Yeah, this one's inverted. This one's non-linear. That's right. So we have the different ones. And each one of these stories, you have so many acts. So you can have a few of them are 3 acts, one is 4 act, and 2 or 5 acts. So at the beginning of each act, you're given random cards. So you're given either a character card. It's usually a character card. Sometimes it's up to 3, depending on which one it is. There's a setting. Sometimes there's a theme. Sometimes there's not. Sometimes there's a conflict. It depends. And then these other cards you will get after each one of your acts. So you have 15 minutes to work on your act. You can either do it, like I like to do it as a storyboard. So I'll kind of partition my page up and I'll kind of draw it in. I know some people like to write, some people will doodle, and then they share with everyone their act. right? So it
So
comes
you're
about,
creating a story, part of a story or something that, like, that's the main objective, right? Is to
exactly, because each one of these story patterns is actually a classic universal story pattern.
okay.
So you're basically creating an outline for a story very quickly. So then
Okay.
Act 2 comes along and you get your new cards and you just kind of roll with it. So it's like, okay, now you got a twist or you got an object, so you got to bring that in. But each kind of act has a little bit of, it's not much, but it's telling you what you're supposed to, like, say the monomyth, this is your place at home normal, right? So
Okay.
like you're setting up that establishment, or like a frame tale, that's your kind of your outer story that you're telling. It's kind of more of your Aladdin kind of story. And so then from there, you get the cards as you go, and it's just like life, you got to like deal with the cards you're dealt.
Yeah.
But
Right.
in doing that, it's amazing. Like so many people are like, I didn't think I could write stories, and they're writing stories super quick.
Yeah.
And like a lot of them kind of get into it. And even for us, when we started making the game, like we got into these stories to the point where we were talking about them like TV shows, because like you kind of you're just making up bullshit, but it's so
Yeah.
much fun. And so like, so you go from there. So then I can show you what these cards kind of start looking like. So then you get to know kind of the game. So here's, could be a beginning for someone. They get sacrificed. So in this case,
Yeah.
it's someone who's a victim of unjust suffering and persecution, demonstrating resilience and strength in the face of adversity and injustice. And it could be happening at an ancient temple. And then this card here is actually a trickster mentor, but we didn't actually kind of bring that up. And this would be happening like in a circular narrative. So
Okay.
this one here, we're playing with, this would be probably someone's first set of cards. And so the creator, underwater city, and this is the pursuit of freedom.
Okay.
And so then Act 2 would come around and they would get this twist. So the character transformation. So this is one of those things where it's like all of a sudden your story is like, okay, but I just set them up. What's going to happen? And you have 15 minutes, and it's amazing what people come up with. And then, of course, the next act, you get another card, so on and so forth. And instead of having it pointed, what we have is moments of reflection. So we have these little tokens that people can give out. They only have so many, but they can be like, hey, that's awesome. This is great. And then at the end of the game, instead of it being more about like judging, it's more about encouragement. So like, because you want to show your stories any way you can, like this one here, we went more with like kind of the deer, like hand puppets, because shadow puppets is one way you can play it. Like that, we had this one lady, she was awesome. She's a animator in Europe, and she was doing all the voices for hers, and it was like so funny.
Huh.
And just, it takes about an hour and a half to 2 hours, but like in the same time you watch a movie with a bunch of friends, you just do this, and it's like
Yeah,
so much
sure.
more fun, and you get 4 stories out of it, or you can team up and do one yourself as a group. But then like say here, like we have, sometimes you get, some things that are very transforming. You get like Oracle's Mirror, so it shows glimpses of the past. So this one, it's on a skyscraper rooftop, and it's a redemption arc. Like you can see it coming together. And so when these cards come up randomly, for some reason they always land. It's kind of like it's a prompt game, really.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
But we strip down like literature down to its most classic forms, and what are its usual conflicts, themes, settings,
Awesome.
And so these took forever. Like each one of those, I had to draw up like 100.
Oh yeah.
72 of these things, and yeah, that was fun. But
Oh, that's
yeah,
real cool.
stripping things down to its absolute essence. So I call these inklings, because it gives you an inkling of an idea. because one of the things I found about like a lot of commercial media is it always keeps you in their franchise.
Yeah.
What if you don't want to be in their franchise? What if you want to build your own franchise, you know?
Yeah, and obviously, I mean, this is kind of something that anybody who writes or creates could use. I mean, I could see if you were obviously first aspect first use that I see as somebody who is a DM is, oh, you know what? I want to run a one shot this week. Let me grab my plot weaver and figure out the game on the spot. Especially if you're playing with a new group and you want to test the waters. There's people
Yeah,
who go around, like they show up to different events to DM, and you can come up with a one shot, seemingly
exactly.
really simple. And of course,
Yeah.
anybody who's writing or anything like that too can use that to.
Well, and that's kind of our goal is we saw this, like I saw this from a need in the workplace because we need to build up those scenarios a lot of times to try and understand different use cases for how something is used. And I know people who like work in film who do screenplays, right? They have that problem. Like you eventually run out of juice. You
Yeah.
need something. And DMs that I know. And I realized like, okay, Brian Eno, like he had this card deck that he used to use for like just kind of idea prompts to get music going.
Yeah.
And I've used that in art school and stuff like that. And I found it really helpful. And I realized I don't know enough about literature to do this, but Miriam did because like that was her whole kind of master's thing was literature. And it's like,
Now that this is your partner, right?
yeah, and this is
And
how we kind of,
co-founder.
yeah,
guys,
co-founder. Oh, we're partners in life, everything. She's,
Yeah.
we live here in Richmond, Quebec. And yeah, with our 3 cats. We're part of a clouder. They've outnumbered us, so it's not a family, we're a clouder. So
Yeah. Nice.
yeah.
A peaceful life.
Yeah, we garden. We have a little bit of a wood lot. And so games are nice, like these kinds of games, especially because you can sit around the fire. It's easy.
Yeah, that's actually when I first read, the description, my first thought was a group of creative people who like to write and come up with story ideas, sitting around a campfire, telling stories using the plot weaver cards. Like that seems like that would be a really fun night.
Yeah. Well, we see it as like a modern classic. It's one of those things that as we built it, we've learned, like I've had these weird moments while I'm designing the cards where you start seeing them and it's like, oh, that was the Mandalorian episode that I just saw the other night. And like you realize that, hey, there's a formula to all of this.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
You just need to know like when to throw the right spice on.
Yeah,
right?
sure.
So because like in a way, most of these franchises, that's just it. They're just the spice. They're the veneer.
Yeah.
But the core mechanisms below all of it, we can all learn those. And then imagine like how it could take your game, or it could take like a filmmaker. They might be struggling for a scene.
Sure.
Like you use this quick and it becomes one of those just, let's get through this as quick as possible. Or maybe you want to do something quick with AI. You can quickly throw that in. If say you're a storyteller, say maybe as a dungeon master, you're like, I've got a thing tonight. I haven't prepared. I'm going to throw these prompts in. Boom. Like that can work too. So it's a really good way to kind of get the juices flowing.
I think that there's only a select amount of original storylines, and over time everybody takes those and twists those and builds on them. I in the game that I'm running now, I had a scenario happen where one of my players is like, that kind of reminds me of that old Star Trek movie. I'm like, yeah, it's kind of where I got the idea from. And same thing with I think anything creative. I've heard somebody say every great rock and metal riff was already written by Black Sabbath, and everyone else just takes it and changes it, slows it down, flips it over. So I think all of that stuff, anytime, any kind of story idea, even, you're going to be able to compare it to somebody, and those those people have got, George Lucas got a lot
Yeah.
from Flash Gordon, and I mean,
Well,
it just keeps going back.
Joseph Campbell's book, right? Like The Hero with a Thousand Faces,
Yeah.
which is Joseph Campbell basically wrote about these like story archetypes or patterns, especially the hero's journey, which is used once you see it. Like that's the crazy thing with these patterns. Once you see them, you're like, you see it in every show. You're like, oh, that's using that.
Definitely.
Or sometimes you see it almost like the golden ratio, where it's like, oh, they used it for this scene. Like, okay, this is a distressed person, and you start seeing how it unravels, and you realize that you can use these for like both micro and macros. So I want to do a graphic novel. I've been writing it. I've been planning it for years. I got to still get my ass down to do it.
Know how that is.
Yeah, but that's one of the things. It's like, because it's episodic, how do you keep those episodes interesting?
Yeah, definitely.
Because Gene Roddenberry, like, he was good at that stuff. Like,
yeah, of course, definitely. And like I said, I mean, I find myself all the time, even when I don't know where I borrowed something from. Sometimes I'll be like, oh, this is a really cool idea. And then, somebody else is like, oh, that's just like in such and such. I'm like, ah, shit, it is, isn't it? But whatever. I mean, that's how it is. We're all adding a part of us to something that's, been existing since, the dawn of man, probably. These stories have always just been built
back, man. They go back. Like, we started doing, like, I was looking more into like anthropology of stories to really try and understand how some of these inklings and stuff work, because I really wanted to get into that idea of this could work for someone, whether they were from, like, my partner, she's from Iran originally. So it's like, how does someone who doesn't have the same cultural bias as we have in North America be able to get in on this and have just as much fun?
Yeah.
And then you get to hear a really cool story a lot of times, because it's kind of like,
gonna have a unique
hey,
background.
That's a perspective I would have never thought about.
Yeah.
And then you start realizing that a lot of these folk tales, they're all related, man. They were like told down the Silk Road, like back when those trade routes, like, you would get stories from China that went to India, Persia, all throughout that kind of belt. Yeah. And they had like that hero's journey or that circular narrative, because those are the stories we all tell. Once you understand that familiarity, you realize it's just kind of like playing the blues or playing rock, or you get into the kind of box and you're able to flow. You're able to just let the magic
I think when it comes to storytelling, I mean, if there's a theme that everyone has, no matter if we had communication with other people or not, I think that the idea that admiring when somebody overcomes adversity, I mean, that's something because we all want to do that. So, I mean, it can't be hard for even, people who we've never met to have the same kind of stories. So, I mean, it's obviously going to be a common thread, but that's cool. That's when you hear those stories and, maybe from a different angle, but go, wow, I can relate to that.
That's where our other partner comes in. Like Emily, her background's in community health, like in mental health. And so she started realizing that there's a health factor in this. When you teach people to tell their stories, whether it's through like some kind of storytelling, narratives help people. They can help people overcome something because they see that these things are possible. So then she came in, and like, her and I have known each other for years and years. We met each other in Montreal, like old friends, but she got into a lot of this community health because she saw a lot of the clinical stuff not working. It's all just drug pushing and stuff like that. Yeah. Where it's like actually giving people the ability and safe space to just be themselves, tell their stories, learn how to tell their story. It's powerful.
Yeah, definitely. So, obviously, I know you're not released yet. What's the best way for people to follow and
well, right now it's Facebook right now. I am working on putting together our kind of update system. I'm doing all the coding myself, so I'm trying to like build everything from scratch. So it's taken a little bit of time, but it has been fun in the learning process, because I hadn't coded for about 12 years. So this has been like doing a boot camp while I'm learning and stuff.
Yeah.
So we should have the crowd, like the game fund, should be up in early November, which we're gonna have blast. But right now, yeah, follow us on Facebook. We're on LinkedIn. We're on Instagram.
Under Mod Hob Games.
Yeah, Mod Hob Games. You'll find us.
Thanks very much, Matt, for being here, and
worries.
we'll be keeping everyone updated. And
Sure.
so now that we're long lost brothers, we'll definitely keep up.
Let's do this again. Actually, I have a proposal. Actually, Miriam said, why don't we do a version of Plot Weaver on your show with you and maybe your partner or whoever you want.
That'd be
and
awesome.
Like we could actually do it up and like, you know, we could help cut it up, because we're planning on doing that eventually as a little podcast ourselves, but we could pilot it with you.
Sounds good. We're down.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yes.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you again, and we'll talk to you later.
Take care.
Hey gamers, thanks again for watching. I really do appreciate all the support. It's one of the things I know that I can count on with the gaming community at large. This is of course to the point where I gotta ask you to like it, hit that subscribe button, and maybe share this with a friend. If you are a game designer, or maybe starting your own gaming company, and you want to do a little bit of cross promotion, maybe you got a prototype that you want me to check out and talk about on the show, definitely let me know. And of course, for all questions, suggestions, and corrections, there's all kinds of ways to get a hold of me. Probably the easiest one is just comment below. You can also send me an email at jackofallgamestt@gmail.com. The T stands for tabletop. And if you'd like to take a look at my commissioned miniature paint jobs, or even some of the other stuff in my life like photography or tattooing, which is what I do for my day job, go check it out on Instagram @ArtofWallace. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next episode.